Well, everyone, it's another year, so it's another time we get to talk about the Nintendo Switch OLED model and see how it holds up in 2025. Now, here's the thing about the Nintendo Switch OLED. I love this console. It's pretty much my go-to Nintendo Switch that I typically pick up and use whenever I can get my hands on it. But there's a few things to keep in mind, and there's a lot of changes that are going to be coming out this particular year, and this is probably going to be the number one year that's going to impact the Nintendo Switch the most. Mostly because we're getting the next successor of the Nintendo Switch. Now, I'm going to bring up a lot of different cases here. I'm going to see whether it's still worth it specifically for you, but I will still tell you the Nintendo Switch OLED still is going to be a very good console to buy. And I always lead in with this example. Some people might be wondering, well, the next Switch is coming out, so will the Switch OLED still be a good console? Will I still enjoy it? I will give you this. I personally still play games that came out 25 years ago. I'm still playing like PlayStation 1 games and Nintendo 64 games and Nintendo GameCube games. I'm still playing all those types of games that came out so many years ago, but I'm not the only one. There are tons and tons of people that still play a lot of these older generations of games. In fact, if you take a look at even some of the most, like the best-selling games of the Nintendo Switch, they were ports from even the Nintendo Wii U, which came out almost like so many years ago as well. So when you think about it like that, Mario Kart 8, which, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, even a lot of ports like Super Mario 3D World, that got ported over. There's a lot of games that came from previous generations of consoles that got ported over to the Switch, and if you're worried about the Nintendo Switch games not performing that well or you not enjoying them, that is not the case. I can guarantee you there are still going to be a lot of Nintendo Switch games, even on the OLED Switch, that are probably going to get ported over to the Nintendo Switch 2, but not only just to the Switch 2. For the next 30 consoles, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Nintendo Switch games ported over to those ones. So with that lead-in, I just kind of want you to think about that in the back of your head. Now with the hardware of the Nintendo Switch OLED, I think this is still a very good looking device, right? This one came out back in 2021, so almost 4 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think. And on the front side of this console, you are getting a 7-inch OLED display. So here's the thing about the Nintendo Switch OLED. I think this is a very good idea to buy. I thought this was a very good approach by Nintendo. Without them having to go through and make like a super big next successor, they just iterated on the console in between, made it a little bit better, and I thought this was such a good idea by Nintendo. This display in and of itself, it's still very good. It is still a very, very good display, and coming from the Nintendo Switch, the original one, and especially the Switch Lite, you are going to see a massive difference. If you're worried, if you're comparing the Nintendo Switch OLED against the Nintendo Switch Lite or the original Nintendo Switch, you're definitely going to be seeing some big improvements, but even just as a console by itself in portable mode, it is going to be giving you a very, very good display. However, the display isn't everything here. You still have the Joy-Cons, you have the buttons on them and everything, and I will tell you, the Joy-Cons themselves, it's such a good idea. For so many years now, they've been such a good idea behind them. You take them out, you can play them separately, you plug them in to charge them. It is such a good idea, but the joystick drift is still real. It is still a problem, and a lot of people are still experiencing joystick drift inside of their Joy-Cons. Now, Nintendo still fixes them, you can still send them in for repair, but it is still very, very annoying, and it can be very inconvenient if you wanted to go through and kind of do anything like that. So I do think this in and of itself is still an annoying thing. It's been many years, Nintendo still hasn't really fixed it. Like I said though, they do give you the capability of turning them in, but still, it's still annoying, and if they really are broken, then you're gonna have to basically spend $50 to get new ones. So that right there is kind of an annoying thing going on for these types of Joy-Cons when it kind of comes down to it. Now on top of that, when it comes down to some other things of these particular devices, the big thing you're going to have to keep in mind is that this console is more than just the console, right? Because the hardware itself still looks pretty good, and I like this console a lot from it, but I would probably tell you there are some cons with this particular console as well to kind of think about. So number one, the hardware itself, a lot of people kind of state that the chipset inside is a little bit outdated. It's that NVIDIA Tegra X1 chipset, and it is a little bit outdated, especially when compared to the competition. To play Nintendo Switch games, it still works, but even with the Nintendo Switch games, I find it still kind of being sluggish, load times are long, there's a lot of annoying things like that. It will get better throughout time, but that is just one thing that kind of ends up happening here. So in this particular situation, that is kind of one of those things to keep in mind there. On top of that, there isn't really any 4K support within these particular consoles either. So if you're going to go through and if you're going to play these types of games, you can't really output to 4K. Again, maybe 1080p is fine for you. Maybe you can upscale here and there with like some like mods, but you're really stuck at 4K support. On top of that, when you kind of go compare this particular device, the Switch OLED, against some of the other competition, maybe like a Steam Deck or maybe like a ROG Ally Pro or something like that, you will kind of notice that those consoles, those devices, those displays can look better, right? They do look better. Even compared to like a lot of mobile phones nowadays, those ones look better, but this one's still okay for the most part, and I think it's a good display. I've seen a lot of complaints about it, but I still think it looks good for it being a dedicated gaming console. But I still think, even with those cons kind of being stated, I still think a Nintendo Switch OLED still has so much capability. There are so many games available for the Nintendo Switch OLED model. You can play this thing, you can just buy this thing today if you've never owned a Switch before, and pretty much never run out of games. You can find all sorts of different games available for this console. And the best thing about the Switch is that it kind of hits like every single category. It's not just a gaming console dedicated to just like Mario fans. You can also play all sorts of other games on it. Now, maybe the graphics aren't the best. Maybe it doesn't have the best online support. And maybe it's not like, the most powerful console. But you can't deny the amount of games that are available for this thing and the amount of community that is behind this thing as well. And the fact that this thing is both a dedicated portable console and it's a, at home like docked up console, that is another very big thing going on for this console too. And personally, I love being able to go through and buy one of these types of devices that is going to be giving you that type of capability. I think that in and of itself is one of the biggest highlights of this device. The fact that it is a well-rounded console, but the biggest thing people are going to kind of state now is, well, why would I buy this thing when the Switch 2 is going to be coming out this year? And to that, I would say, well, if you're trying to go through and buy a console that's going to last for the next 5 to 10 years, this thing, if you've never played Switch games before, you will still have a lot of games there, but of course this thing is not going to have too many developed games for it. If you were somebody who's going to go through and you want to go ahead and play the next generation of games, and you can wait and you can afford to wait and you're not in a rush, then I would recommend waiting. If you want, you can buy a used Nintendo Switch Lite for a little bit less money and kind of start building out your digital gaming library there. I'm sure they'll be ported over to the Switch 2. Nintendo's already confirmed this. But if you aren't really in that category and you don't mind buying like a console now, you're planning on buying some Switch games, you don't care too much about online multiplayer, and you'll upgrade to the next console in a couple years, I think even in 2025, even if the Switch 2 was announced today, I would still recommend people buying the Switch OLED. Just depends on the price. I probably would not buy full retail. I'd probably go buy it in the used market to save some money. But I think with the Switch OLED, this thing still makes a lot of sense to buy. There's still so many games available for this thing. It's such a versatile console. It looks good for the most part. My only complaint of this console is the Joy-Cons. That's really my only issue. Like, my Joy-Cons already fail. They're so annoying. I've had 3 different pairs of Joy-Cons fail. And if that is enough of a reason for you to wait, that would be enough of a reason for me to wait to the Switch 2, because apparently they fix it. But I would still say the Switch OLED is still good enough for the most part. It still holds up well. And I would still recommend people buying it in 2025 as well. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.